Hey, today we got Brandon Smith on, a teach coach mentor. So he is a former Marine, now entrepreneur, and we actually just met like online, not in real life, but within the last 2 days ago, I think we met.
It was about 2 days ago.
Yeah, and we had a great conversation about the Marine Corps, about life after the Marine Corps, about this whole entrepreneurship thing, and we talked a little bit about the difference between coaching folks, at kind of in the service and especially with a Marine bent to it, and then also now kind of in the civilian life, and um, you know what the differences are there and how challenging it can be and how different it can be sometimes. So anyway, really happy to have you on. So why don't you just tell folks a little bit about yourself, where you're from, maybe a few things about your service in the Marine Corps, and then what you're up to right now.
Yeah, so I'm Brandon Smith, former U.S. Marine. I did 6 years. I did mostly reserves, but I was a motor transport operator uh, with an artillery unit. So I was doing field operations for most of my time, and yeah, that was mostly my experience with that. Um, was an enlisted guy the entire time, um, but uh, made a transition into entrepreneurship eventually. Coming out of the military, there was some space in between from making that transition, just doing like employment work, just finding a 9 to 5, and then discovering entrepreneurship in general, and seeing that it was something that felt called to me to do. So it's, it's been a journey, to say the
Yeah.
least.
So tell me about that. Like, what
Yeah,
about, entrepreneurship's like this generic term that we use, right?
yeah,
For covers all manner of activities. So like, tell me what specifically drew you to it, and then also
yeah,
why you think you felt drawn to it.
yeah. So I felt drawn to entrepreneurship because I just felt like, especially coming out of the military and um, feeling like just doing what I was told, things like that. I and having those sets, like um, having that carried over to the civilian world, especially just finding 9 to 5, and ultimately, it just didn't feel like it was like the most fulfilling thing for me to
Yeah.
just continue with a traditional life path that a lot of people go into, and it definitely took me some time to realize that this path in particular was the right one for me. So it wasn't like a complete 180 shift from, oh, I'm gonna just have my own business after the military. It wasn't that wasn't really the case for me. It was more so slow, steady. It was like while I was working on the civilian side, doing work for FedEx. That was my first job um, on the civilian side. Then I picked up after FedEx. I decided to do a test technician work for an e-commerce company, and it still things just didn't seem right to me. It just felt like there was something missing in my life. I just felt like I had a lost sense of purpose behind coming out of the military,
Yeah.
especially because I think a lot of people, veterans especially, they might feel like their identity has been shaped with the military. They attach their identity to it so long because they've been around for so long. They have the structure, they have the routine, and they're around other guys, military guys a lot, um, and to no fault of their own, when they come out of that, when they have this complete dynamic shift from military to civilian life, something deep inside changes within them. Like, and well, most times it's mainly their identity. If they attach their identity, like I did, to the military, then something can feel lost. And I felt like entrepreneurship for me was a way to be able to reintroduce that sense of purpose in my life and fulfillment, to be able to serve others. And that was what it was about for me, to be able to serve and help others um, in this path. And like, this was the ultimate journey for me because I felt like doing this in a 9 to 5 wouldn't be um, something I could do in the ultimate sense of helping others to the capacity that I want. Um, and that's just how I see it. Um, so that's ultimately where I stand with it.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I was drawn to it for the same reasons, and a few different ones. So
Mhm.
kind of on the similar front, I think what's really unique about it, and I don't think people understand that uh, that service and entrepreneurship are not incompatible, right? In fact, they
Yeah,
can, in fact, be the same thing. Your purpose is to go out and find people's pain, right? And then
yeah,
solve that pain for them, right?
yeah,
Whether it's a product or a service or a system or coaching or whatever it happens to be.
yeah,
And like that's okay, right? It's also okay to get paid to do that, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
and
yeah,
I don't know if you've run into this, but especially with veterans, I struggled with this a little bit myself, but convincing them like, no, it's okay to charge because your time is valuable, your experience
yeah,
is valuable, and you're giving yourself to that, right? So,
yeah,
I always say lead with free value first, right? Always give free value first because you genuinely want to help people,
yeah,
and then at some point, if someone says, hey, look, I want to do this, right? Well, then charge what you're worth. You know what I mean? It's you're
yeah,
delivering a service. You're giving them your expertise and years of training and failures, right? All the failures that you've stacked up
yeah,
behind you, and you're trying to help
yeah,
them avoid those same things, man. That's worth a lot, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when I started this journey, like I also led with free value, probably a bit more than I anticipated, right? So like probably I've been in this entrepreneurial journey for probably a little over 2 years at this point,
Yeah,
and I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to this. That there's just that huge gap from like you start at zero, right? And it seems like it's such a big gap from being able to go from zero to even one,
yeah.
right? It's
It's the
such a
hardest.
huge,
That it
it's the
is the biggest.
hardest.
Yeah. That is the
Yeah,
hardest step. Yeah, there's no
yeah.
doubt about it.
And I think like the amount of what you talked about, like being uncomfortable with like charging for your value or for your service, I can understand that because that's what I've gone through. And
Yeah,
only recently, like as of a few months ago, have I been like more comfortable like with actually charging for my services. And even though I've gained a lot of experience along the way, like there are some certain things that I need to change about what I told myself, like what I believed in myself to do. Like I would have been able to um, make a lot more progress faster, easier if I just shifted a few uh, beliefs about myself and like what my value was
yeah.
in the market and the world. But but yeah, it's uh, I can understand that uncomfortability as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think the other thing for me that really attracted me to it was the fact that I could build teams of people
Yeah,
to go solve problems, right? I mean, that's what you do in the Marine Corps, in the military, is you're constantly solving problems with teams of people.
yeah,
And, I was like, as I was kind of looking at market problems, and I thought, I can't solve that exactly, but I know a guy who can, right? I know
yeah,
this dude, Brandon Smith, he'd be perfect to solve this problem. And so you just go and you get to find, right? And you get to choose whoever you want, right? This isn't like an employee hiring situation, right, where there's rules and all of that. Like, no, I can just go find veterans and say, hey, do you want to team up and go? Do you want to go do this thing, right?
yeah.
I love that aspect of it where you just get to choose the most competent, coolest people you can imagine, and then go solve problems. Now, it's not without risk, right?
Right, right. Yeah,
It's not a 9 to 5. If it doesn't work and the market doesn't respond, like that's it. It's you just wasted a bunch of time. I don't think it's a waste, but so there's definitely different challenges involved there for sure. But what are you seeing like when you're working with veterans? Because you coach and you work with folks, and I think is it veterans specifically or
so when I
like
started out,
who do you help?
yeah, so veterans first responders, that would be my
Got it.
primary audience.
Yep.
I don't necessarily keep myself in that box. So like if there are other
Sure.
people that are seeking help, and I literally hopped on a call with someone earlier today who I have confidence that I could help with. He's not a veteran himself,
Yeah.
but recognizing the problems that he's had in his life,
Yeah.
and like I could still relate and resonate with the problems that he's had that I've been able to solve in my life.
Yeah.
So I don't keep myself in that box necessarily, but that's just who I target primarily.
Yeah.
That's what I do basically. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I do the same thing. One of the things I do is specifically for vets, first responders, and their families. And yes, we let other
yeah,
folks in too, but you got to be sponsored.
yeah,
Someone's got to vouch for you and let you
yeah,
into the
yeah,
inner circle.
yeah.
Which is really great. But when you're working with folks from wherever, whatever background, like what's the biggest problem you're seeing that they're having trouble with that you're fixing as a coach that you're working on them with?
Yeah. So um, there could be a multitude of problems, but I think
Yeah.
the biggest one that I've seen from probably the hundreds of calls that I've been on um, is that people are just overwhelmed. They they just have um, I mean, I think a lot of things that can lead to overwhelm and confusion with how to navigate business,
Yeah.
um, especially for those who are making that transition. So for veterans, they want to make that transition. Um, One thing is probably that identity aspects that they find that they lack that sense of purpose and fulfillment, and they're just trying to find something. They're trying to
Yeah.
fill that void within them, and that was me as well. So I felt like there was a hole inside of me to want to that I wanted to fill for that piece of fulfillment. But um, I think I just navigate the different problems that I see people with. So like to put this into a more concrete example. So there are two people I've worked with, one being a former Border Patrol agent, and
Yeah.
another being a single mother, nurse, kids, 3 kids, and she still wanted to build a business. Like she still had this desire. I say both of them were pretty overwhelmed
Yeah.
with navigating business in general, and having someone to help them navigate like what are the core components of like what we can help solve within business to be able to gain momentum towards going from zero to even just one. Because
Yeah.
like I said, that's the biggest gap. People can be overwhelmed with that starting point. So being able to help like identify constraints mostly, helping with their time. Time management is a big aspect. Like with
Yeah.
the single mother and nurse I was working with, the biggest thing is time for her.
Mm.
She has 2 jobs she's working with. She's a nurse, she's overwhelmed. She has 3 kids, single mother. Like there's so much mental like garbage within her. So like
Yeah.
there's there's such limited bandwidth to be able to create space for navigating business.
Yeah.
So being able to deconstruct that and being able to identify what you could spend the most time on that gives the best results for you, and being able to
Yeah.
recognize um, what are the things that are essential for your time, what are the things that you want to have as growth related for your time. So like um, I say I see business as just one aspect of life, and of course we're focusing on business. What we want to tackle like other areas of our life that we want to steward. So like your health, your relationships, and the business, your mental health, your physical health, like all these things are interconnected that I see. And if these things like if any one area breaks apart, then your business is
Yeah.
not going to thrive. So I try to tackle it in a more holistic perspective. So like to recognize what are you spending most time on? What can we maximize the amount of time spent on and energy spent on these sorts of areas, and what can we remove? We want to create space first to be able to have the capacity to even think about growing a business because um, when you're in that transition period, some people might be working a 9 to 5 in the civilian world, And if
Right.
they don't have the time to commit full time to this, they need to recognize what kind of time they need to have spent, and before even thinking about it. That's
Yeah.
that's how, that's my that's how I try to solve things first and foremost, and then, like I said, identifying the constraints of the business. Like once you create space for the business, what are the few things that you could do today that can help solve those constraints, that the bottleneck. For one, when people are trying to navigate business, they're a lot of people can focus on a lot of wrong things. They work for hours in a day and get little result. And I've been there myself. I've been like when I first started. So me and Michael, we run school communities, for example, SKOOL. I think
Yeah.
I don't know if your audience knows that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of my
uh,
audience is in
okay,
my,
okay,
I have a free school community. Like
yeah,
really it's dedicated to this podcast,
yeah.
to mentoring, to coaching. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so they're pretty aware.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
so when I first started with this entrepreneurship thing, I was just thinking about like what are some things I could build,
Hmm.
like courses or uh, programs, things like that. And I just like tried to focus on building things, improving
Yeah.
products, and things like that. But that's not the constraint. Like you have like a baseline product that you can test for someone. It's best to have like some sort of outline or baseline that you can start with, and then build with your customers and clients.
Yeah.
That's how I recognize the constraint, because um, people are focused too much on the wrong things, and rather than focus on the few things that can lead to getting the results, like closing the gap from 0 to 1.
Yeah.
When I see like when you want to get your first client, for example, you like are you going to be spending most of your time trying to improve the product, or are you going to try to spend your time actually reaching out to people, making content that is attracting your audience, or running ads to like actually get in front of people, or just I don't know, going door to door, something that is actually attracting the
Yeah.
people in order to get that first client. Are you spending more
Yeah.
time on that or on
Don't
the other thing?
discount the old canvassing technique. That still works, right? Yeah.
What's that?
Oh, I said don't discount the old
Yeah.
canvassing technique, walking around going door to door,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
it's
Yeah.
funny that you mentioned that because I think people get very comfortable sitting behind a computer and then running ads,
Yeah.
and it's like at the end of the day, whatever business you're in, if it's
Yeah.
products, if it's services, if it's coaching, every business is a people business, right? And
Yeah.
you have to get out and you have to talk to your potential clients and you have
Yeah.
to find out and you have to like go through the rejection part of finding out
Yes.
that they're not interested, right? Like
Yes.
you
Yes.
go, okay,
Yes.
if I showed up with a Lamborghini and charged $10, they would buy it. And right. So like I don't have a Lamborghini and I'm charging more than $10. So like what's the where this is my fault, not theirs, right? But like,
Yeah.
that's hard. That is really a hard thing to go to, but you have to.
Yeah.
You have to do that. And then when you get customers, you have to be relentless with your clients, with your customers, and you have to find out. And you don't want to bother them, too much, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to
It's
be,
too,
no one
it's
wants
too
to fill out a
much.
survey
You
every
don't
day.
want,
But you
yeah.
you gotta talk to them and say, hey,
Yeah.
like, is this still working for you? Can I improve it? Can I give it? When someone leaves, right? The first
Yeah.
question is not, hey, what can I do to get you to stay? The first question is, hey, what could we have done better to keep you, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's huge. And I'll just a very short story. This the show's not about me; it's about you. But when my first business I tried to launch was a student coaching business, and I think we talked about this on our call. It turns out
Yeah.
like students don't want coaching because they're young and they haven't made mistakes yet and they have no pain and the whole world's in front of them and life is good, and so they're just kind of less interested in it. But I just liked working with young folks and I was trying to make that happen. And man, I canvassed, dude. I went around, I went to local businesses and said, hey, I'm willing to come talk to your daycare crew. You got young folks that are taking care of little kids. I'll come talk to them for 30 minutes for free, right? And just I need to find out what lands with them. And I fell flat a lot.
Yeah.
Every now and then somebody get pumped and they get excited and you go, I need to know what got you excited about that. And then you got to track some of the other ones down and say, hey, you looked bored out of your mind while I was talking. Like what what could I be doing better? What would you rather hear about? You know,
Yeah.
it's not an easy process, as I know you
No,
know.
it's not. No,
Yeah,
my own rejection process. Um, I went on 20 sales calls, like legit presenting offers for people, like going through the discovery process, going through the calls, literally making customized offers for them specifically, and yet I still got 20 no's in a row.
yeah,
20 no's, and like this isn't also isn't counting the I literally counted how many calls I've taken overall
yeah,
on my booking calendar for the past year, and I've taken 141 calls,
yeah.
one on one. Not all sales calls, like some, like a good majority of them are networking calls, connecting with
Sure.
them. A good amount of discovery calls, just purely like figuring out like what problems they need want to solve, and then 20 of them were sales calls, and I got 20 no's in a row before
Yeah.
my first sale. The rejection is inevitable, right?
Which, by the way, is actually not that bad.
It's
Like,
not. Yeah,
yeah, you could go 100 and not
yeah,
get a sale, right? For sure.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, no,
yeah,
that reminds me, and I've probably brought this up on the show once or twice, so forgive me to any of the listeners that are tired of this story, but I think I've only brought it up once or twice. There's a story about a psychologist who would work with young men who had anxiety issues, right? Serious introversion issues, anxiety issues, and he had a test that you had to pass if you wanted to enter a program with him. And the test was that you had to go out on a single day and you had, this was young men specifically, you had to go talk to 100 girls and you had to ask for 100 numbers. Like that was the minimum requirement. Now, notice like there was no requirement for acceptance. You could have gotten zero numbers. That didn't matter. You just had to ask 100 times,
yeah,
which I think does two things. Like number one, it allows you to be comfortable with rejection,
yeah,
right? You just get used to it. You right? You become not immune. No one's ever really immune, but you go, okay, this is not that bad. But then two, and I think more importantly, it reduces the fear around potential rejection, which stops a lot of people from doing a lot of things, right? Not just in the dating world, but in the business world and the academic, right? You don't do something because the fear of the thing is greater than the actual thing itself, right? And so I think his whole approach was if you can't get over that, my program's useless to you because I'll teach you all the things you need to know and we'll do the exercise. But if you can't get over the fear, then there's no point, right?
yeah,
And so I always love that story. I think that's true in sales. That's true in psychology. Apparently, I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe he didn't have a successful practice because no one passed, but I always love that. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's. I mean, there's a. I don't know if you've listened to any Jocko Willink, but
Oh
he
yeah,
also
Jocko's
says a
great.
quote. It's like besides death, all failure or fear is psychological, right?
Yeah,
It's all in our heads,
yeah,
and we
exactly.
catastrophize it to death.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's that catastrophization. That's a terrible word to try to say. Uh, yeah, a lot of folks do that. I taught in the classroom for a lot of years, and you see that from students, especially, right? I failed the test, so I'm going to fail the class, which means I won't graduate college, which means I won't get married because I'll be uneducated and no one will marry me, and then I won't have kids. My whole life is ruined, right? You're just like,
Yeah.
holy cow, slow up the brakes, man. Like, take a step back and let's just figure out what went wrong here and get it fixed and move on, right?
Yeah.
But it is something that we all do, and I think maybe just a quick plug for a mindfulness practice of just trying to be aware of your thoughts. Spend a minute or two a day, because if you can catch yourself thinking that and then go, "Hey, wait a minute, that none of that's true," and just kind of stop that in motion or in progress, it really can feel like a superpower for sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
well, hey, look, I always have one last question that I finish on. But before we get to that question, just tell folks like where they can find you if they're interested in what you do or helping out with vets or, for whatever reason they might want to reach out to you. Maybe they want some coaching. You never know. Where can
Yeah.
they find you? Where can they contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a few ways you can reach out to me or find me. I do have a YouTube channel. It's just my name, or at the handle is at Brandon Smith X. I do
Okay.
talk about entrepreneurship, business, discipline, many areas of life that pertain to life and business. that can help you out in multiple areas of your life. So I do focus on content like that on YouTube. You can find me on
Nice.
school. I do have a community called Mental Momentum, helping veterans and first responders land their first clients, transition into entrepreneurship. I help with all that, and yeah, that's mostly the ways you can find me.
Well, that's great. Well, we'll make sure it's all linked in the show notes for everybody. And then let's get to the last question, which is you're at the end of your life and you're looking back on all of it, right? And we all
Yeah,
have regrets and, mistakes that we've made. You can't avoid that. But what's the
yeah.
one thing that you can't screw up that you know you're going to be able to leave peacefully if you get right? What is that?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry about that.
No, it's a heavy one. You're at the end of your life
Yeah,
and there's one thing in your life that you really have to get right if you feel good about leaving the earth, right?
yeah.
You don't want to leave with this one regret. What is it? What's that one thing that you got to get right that you can't screw up,
Right.
or you're gonna leave unpeacefully?
Be willing to not hold back on what you believe in.
Okay.
Because like the discussions we've talked about like with sales and like marketing and things like that, you have to be willing to face that rejection, but reaching out to people, making those genuine connections, even if it's not a transaction, you make a
Yeah.
connection. And for me, I've recently like we haven't really talked about this, but I have a genuine love for Christ. I'm a believer in Christ, and I feel like I have a need to reach out to people and share my beliefs and share my own testimony and share my own experiences, even though we haven't really talked much about like in the biblical sense on this
Yeah.
show. But like there are so many things that like if we hold our beliefs back and like what genuinely helps us as individuals, and if we gatekeep that from others, how can others experience the same joy and fulfillment and peace that you've been able to acquire in your own life because you just were uncomfortable, that you were just that you're afraid of what people think of you
Mm.
because like and if you're genuinely afraid of that, the fear is going to be there. Like, yeah, it's scary to reach out to people, but what is the consequence of not doing it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think there's a far greater consequence in gatekeeping things and just letting yourself. There's almost like an ego about it, right? You don't want to tell people or let people know about like what you believe in because it just you just want to keep it to yourself, you know. It's like almost a pride thing, but
Yeah.
such it's like a humble process. Like there's so much humility and just reaching out to people, connecting with people, and just sharing your stories, sharing your own beliefs, and that's the human connection is what's all about. We were never meant to go about life alone and keep things to ourselves
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Well,
that's
I
yeah,
wonder if that's maybe why you see vets creating communities and coaching and mentoring and sticking together. So that's a
yeah,
that's a great message to end it on. I appreciate it.
yeah.
Brandon, thanks so much for coming on the show, and it was a pleasure having you. And Semper Fi, brother.
Simplify. Thank you.